And Nancy Pelosi has a little problem because her husband sold their Visa stock. They had a lot of Visa stock one day before Visa was announced that Visa is being sued by the Department of Justice. Think of that.
All right, you've got to admit that Trump has been fearless in calling out Democrats like Nancy Pelosi and others for their shady dealings, power grabs, and hypocrisy. Nancy Pelosi, she's been in Washington for decades, pulling the strings behind the scenes. And Trump was one of the first to really put a spotlight on just how out of touch and corrupt she's become. Whether it's her insider trading scandals, where her stock trades magically seem to align with major legislative decisions, or her lavish lifestyle while Americans struggle with inflation and rising costs, Trump's been one of the few who's not afraid to say what everyone else is thinking. He's exposed her for the career politician she is, someone who profits off her position while pretending to fight for the people.
Nancy Pelosi sold vast amounts of Visa stock one day before the big lawsuit that we all read about a few days ago was brought against Visa. You think it was luck? I don't think. She should be prosecuted. Nancy Pelosi should be prosecuted for that. And she should also be prosecuted for J6 because she turned down 10,000 or any number she wanted, soldiers or National Guard.
All right, listen to this. Nancy Pelosi making this suggestion about GOP voters, which many are comparing to Hillary Clinton's 2016 basket of deplorables comment.
There are people who will never be, shall we say, inclined to support Democrats because of they just have a different orientation toward women, people of color, LGBTQ. You know, they just are not ever going to be there. So say that's about like 30% or something like that. And then of the Republicans.
Outkick.com host Tommy Lahren joins me now. Tommy, good morning to you. So what do you think about that comment?
Well, she's right about one part of that, Carly. It's that there are many Republicans in this country who will never vote Democrat. And maybe her comments about Republican voters might have something to do with that. But the fact that we're probably not going to vote for a Democrat when she classifies us in such a nasty, untrue, and cruel way. But this is unfortunately, part of the Democrat politician playbook, and that's to attack American voters. It's never strategically smart to attack voters. You can talk about Republican politicians or policies all day long, but to attack 30% of a Republican Party that you've never met and that you don't know.
Pelosi has this habit of painting anyone who disagrees with the Democratic agenda as some kind of extremist or villain. We've all heard it. Republican voters are called deplorables, racists, insurrectionists, and more, just because we don't fall in line with their progressive big government left-wing ideology. The Democrats, led by people like Pelosi, try to make it seem like if you support lower taxes, limited government, and strong borders, you're somehow a threat to democracy. But that's just absurd. But my question is, when will mainstream media hold her accountable for the shady stock trades that she has gotten away with over and over again? She goes on these interviews, and this isn't even a topic brought up.
My, what a coincidence. Nancy Pelosi's husband sold over $500,000 worth of Visa stock just weeks before the DOJ's antitrust lawsuit against that company, according to the New York Post. In case you missed it, the Justice Department has sued Visa on Tuesday, accusing the company of illegally monopolizing the debit card market and driving up prices for businesses and consumers. The suit alleges Visa handles more than 60% of debit card transactions, rakes in over $7 billion in annual processing fees. The suit further alleges that Visa used its market power to stifle competition and keep fees high. Statement Attorney General Merrick Garland said, quote, "We allege that Visa has unlawfully amassed the power to extract fees that far exceed what it could charge in a competitive market. Merchants and banks pass along those costs to consumers, either by raising prices or reducing the quality of service. As a result, Visa's unlawful conduct affects not just the price of one thing, but the price of nearly everything." Meanwhile, Paul Pelosi, the former House Speaker's husband, sold 2,000 shares worth of Visa between $500,000 and $1 million. That's according to a July 3rd congressional filing. At the time Pelosi sold his stock, there was no public indication that an antitrust lawsuit against Visa was imminent. A spokesperson for Representative Pelosi told the Post, quote, Speaker Pelosi does not own any stocks, and she has no prior or subsequent involvement in any transactions, right? It's not her, just the husband, who has all sorts of stocks in lots of company. Famously, they had stock in Facebook as well. So it's possible this is all above board and is a coincidence and has nothing to do with this forthcoming investigation, but a lot of people are going to have a hard time believing that.
Listen, I'm all for calling corruption on both sides. But the mainstream media continues to call out so-called corruption only when it pertains to right-wing candidates. The big media companies load their talking panels with left-wing voters to drown out the few right-wing voices they do have. But the truth can't be ignored, and every once in a while, the truth comes out. This is what they don't want you to know.
I would just say the spate of polls that came out yesterday, Quinnipiac, our CNN polling, the Gallup poll indicators right now, the nervous campaign this morning is the Harris campaign. They're not where they need to be with young voters. They're not where they need to be with voters of color, working class voters. They're not achieving the margins that they need that Joe Biden was getting in 2020. And Trump's base is immovable. And right now, his administration and him personally are more popular than they have ever been.
Yeah, I'm still confused about which billionaire rich people are good and which are bad. Trump is, I guess, bad. The people who support Trump are bad. The billionaires that she goes around with, I guess, are good. I think it's a very muddled thing, and I still don't understand. I think today was a miss for Harris. I mean, Joe Biden went on The View today and said he delegated all sorts of authority to her on domestic policy. We know that the Biden administration is not popular on domestic and economic policy. She gave a speech today saying we've got to move past the policies that people think have failed. Well, people think the last 4 years are a failure. And from what I can tell from this interview tonight, which was really a home game, I mean, going on with this particular interviewer was like effectively interviewing with her campaign's press secretary. She had nothing new to say on the economy beyond this ridiculous pablum. You want to talk about aspirations and dreams? They're crushed in this country because of inflation, and these kinds of interviews and the day that she had today are not going to solve it.
So, Jane.
At the end of the day, Donald Trump isn't just a political figure. He's a spotlight shining on all the corruption, hypocrisy, and self-serving behavior that's been going on in the Democratic Party for years. Pelosi, Kamala, Biden, they've all been playing the same game for decades, and Trump's been the one to call them out and say, enough is enough.